Tuka Mimori had to endure an unhappy childhood. He grew up with a violent foster father. The man always treated Tuka cruelly. That was the painful past he carried. One day, Tuka woke up on the school bus. He never expected to see such a scene before him. The class president Ayaka was being bullied by Oyamada. Meanwhile, the other students pretended not to see anything. Even the teacher Zakurojiji ignored it. He acted with complete irresponsibility. At this moment, Tuka could no longer endure it. He suddenly stood up. Tuka immediately demanded that Oyamada return Ayaka's belongings. However, Oyamada refused to listen. Instead, he continued to insult Tuka. Oyamada looked down on Tuka as a weakling. He then turned and ordered Takuto to beat Tuka. But Takuto refused. Unexpectedly, he told Oyamada to return Ayaka's belongings. Because Takuto had influence in the class, this angered Oyamada and forced him to give the items back. Oyamada then vented his anger on Yasu. He shouted loudly and attacked him. Teacher Zakurogi did not punish him at all. He only warned Oyamada not to go too far. Tuka began to reflect on human indifference. Suddenly a beam of light appeared. Tuka and all the students were transported to another world. A woman who called herself the goddess Visus appeared. She explained that this was another world. 200 years ago, heroes had defeated the Demon King. But now the Demon King had revived. Therefore, she summoned the students to become heroes and save the world. At that moment, Takuto spoke on behalf of the class. He asked what would happen if they refused to cooperate. Visus replied that if they did not defeat the Demon King, they would never be able to return to their original world. To reverse the summoning ritual, they needed a material called the Evil King Factor. That material was the Demon King's heart. To prove her power, the goddess took action. Visus ordered a demon beast to be released. It attacked a man right in front of the students. She then easily destroyed the monster with a single spell. The students witnessed this scene. They were filled with fear. However, some students remained calm and analyzed the situation. One by one, the students placed their hands on the appraisal orb. Most of them received average evaluations. Suddenly, Oyamada achieved rank A. This made him extremely arrogant. However, when Takuto touched the orb, he unexpectedly shattered it. Takuto was confirmed to be rank S. Ayaka and Hajiri then stepped forward. Both were also recognized as rank S heroes. Finally, it was Tuka's turn. He only caused the orb to emit a faint purple light. His result was rank E. The goddess paid no attention to him at all. Meanwhile, Yasu was similar to Tuka. Unexpectedly, he obtained the rare power, Dark Hero. Tuka opened his status screen. He suddenly realized his innate skill was abnormal status. It allowed Tuka to inflict harmful effects on enemies. However, Visus looked down on this skill. She claimed that its success rate was low. Its duration was short, and it was useless against powerful monsters. Finally, the goddess declared, "Rank E heroes are nothing but burdens." Tuka was then forced into a teleportation circle. He was immediately thrown into abandoned ruins. Because this place was meant for criminals and the discarded, she promised that, if Tuka survives and crawls back to the surface, we will no longer interfere in his affairs. At that moment, those whom Tuka had helped before, all turned their backs on him. Meanwhile, after gaining power, Yasu openly looked down on Tuka. Everyone else treated him as useless. Before leaving, Visus threw Tuka a magic bag. She called it her final mercy toward him. At that moment, Ayaka tried to oppose this cruel decision. But she was knocked unconscious by Visus instantly. This enraged Tuka. He tried to use the paralysis skill. But it was blocked by the goddess's absolute barrier. Takuto even attacked Visus, because he only wanted to test his new power. At that instant, a dark part of Tuka's personality suddenly awakened. It told him to stop crying, and to accept his true self. Before Tuka was teleported away, he cursed the goddess, and swore to take revenge if he survived. Tuka woke up inside a dungeon. Human bones were scattered all around him. Suddenly a monster rushed out to attack. Tuka ran away in panic. He ran while crying. But when he fell down, he realized his true feeling was not fear but resentment. Tuka recklessly used the paralysis skill. Unexpectedly, the monster was completely paralyzed. When another monster appeared, Tuka tried again and succeeded once more. He realized his skill was not useless at all. Even though Tuka's mana was nearly depleted, he used poison as well. Tuka began to counterattack. For the first time he understood that, I can survive with this power. Tuka clenched his teeth and told himself, I will rely on no one anymore. Tuka Mimori finally began his own survival battle. He resolved to kill everyone who looked down on him. When a minotaur charged toward him, Tuka immediately used paralysis. However, this time the skill had no effect. Tuka quickly realized that, I cannot use the same skill twice in a row on the same target. He immediately switched to sleep to restrain it. Then he used poison. At this moment Tuka finally understood that, I can apply multiple abnormal statuses to one target. But, I cannot apply the same one repeatedly. Tuka decided he must learn all the limitations of his skills. But, his immediate problem was that, Tuka's current mana was extremely low. The situation worsened as more monsters swarmed in. Tuka decided to gamble everything on this plan. Every time his mana recovered by 1 point, he immediately used it to restrain a charging monster. Tuka clearly understood that, if his will broke even once, he would die instantly. In that life and death moment, Tuka's level suddenly rose to 258. A massive amount of mana surged into his body. Tuka realized that the earlier monster had given him an enormous amount of experience. But, he pushed those thoughts aside. Tuka focused on a single goal. I must survive in order to take revenge. After repeated uses of his skills, Tuka discovered he could restrain multiple targets at once. As long as the monsters were within the skill's range, he could easily restrain them. Tuka then reached 2 important conclusions. First, his abnormal status skill had an almost 100% success rate, with the sole exception of the goddess Visis. Second, Tuka could not stack the same status on one target. Tuka then applied poison to the restrained monsters. He opened his status screen. Unexpectedly, all his stats surged at an extreme speed, especially his mana, which became incredibly high. This was the stat he needed the most. Every time a monster fell, Tuka's level rose dramatically again. As Tuka continued to use his skills repeatedly, his skills also leveled up alongside him. His sleep skill reached level 2. After reaching level 501, the monster horde began to flee. Tuka took the chance to collect equipment from the dead. He then set out to search for water and food. Along the way, Tuka returned to process monster corpses for food. But, their meat was too tough and grotesque. He could not bring himself to eat it. At that moment, the crystal inside Tuka's magic bag suddenly turned purple and stopped glowing. Tuka tried channeling mana into it. He suddenly received heart attack and drinking water. In the end, this bag saved Tuka's life. Many days passed. Tuka continued hunting monsters and grinding levels in a mentally unstable state. He began to ask himself, why can I kill so coldly with such ease? He recalled his violent childhood. It had made Tuka emotionally numb. Yet the people who once saved him had taught him kindness and compassion. Now Tuka realized he had changed. He could strike without fear or hesitation. In the end, Tuka accepted that a new person has been born. When Tuka reached the 25th floor of the dungeon, he discovered the corpse of a peculiar man. Through the notes left behind, Tuka learned that the man's name was Anlin. He was known as the Dark Hero. Anlin possessed the same type of power that Yasu had. But, he had been cast down here by the goddess Visis, because he was deemed useless. This filled Tuka with rage toward Visis's crimes. Inside Anlin's belongings, Tuka found a forbidden grimoire encyclopedia and a spellbook. Though Tuka could not fully understand their contents, before leaving he read a message written in blood. Beware the Soul Eater. Tuka then found a gate leading to the surface. But, it required an activation orb. In the end, he encountered the Soul Eater. The monster was holding the orb on its forehead. Before Tuka could act, a laser suddenly pierced through his hand. The Soul Eater's attack speed was far too fast. Tuka's skills required casting time. His high level was of little help in this situation. The monster began its hunt. It created human-shaped replicas to torment Tuka mentally. Tuka tried using paralysis to restrain several replicas. But, he did not dare use poison on non-living entities. Taking advantage of the monster's opening, Tuka suddenly activated paralysis. The Soul Eater was rendered immobile. Tuka admitted that, I deliberately acted to buy casting time. Tuka then coldly applied poison to all replicas. His skills continued to level up. The Soul Eater collapsed in despair. As the souls it had absorbed began to appear, they thanked Tuka and passed on. At that moment Anlin's soul also appeared. He asked Tuka to punish the goddess Visus in his place. Tuka then placed the orb into the gate and left the dungeon. Before departing, Tuka bowed his head to thank the fallen souls. He then continued his journey of revenge. Deep within the forest, Oyamada and the summoned students were struggling to hunt monsters for experience. Oyamada focused on fighting to earn points. Meanwhile Gasu burned enemies with dark flame. Takuto also displayed overwhelming power by using Dragonic Booster. Kobata felt unable to fit in with them, because she could not adapt to this brutal world. Asaji then walked over and put an arm around her shoulder. Asaji warned Kobata that, if she failed to fit in, she would be isolated by the entire class. Asaji concluded that, this class was on the verge of collapse. Because of their arrogance and the ranking system from E to S, Asaji proudly stated that she herself was rank B. She advised Kobata to join her faction in order to survive. Asaji continued manipulating Kobata by saying that, Class President Ayaka will eventually be sacrificed. She threatened that, if Kobata fails to achieve results, she will lose her status when returning to the original world. To force Kobata's loyalty, Asaji ordered the other girls to bring monsters over. She then forced Kobata to kill them with her own hands. In a state of panic, Kobata feared being eliminated like Tuka. She struck down and killed the monster, causing her to completely break down. At that moment she recalled Toka's past kindness. Kobata also blamed herself for her own weakness. Meanwhile, after regaining consciousness, Class President Ayaka directly confronted the goddess Visus. She questioned her about discarding Tuka. Visus pretended to cry and blamed the harsh policies of the nation of Alien. She declared that, the ritual of eliminating the weak will continue. Ayaka firmly opposed this method. She took on the burdens of the weaker students to protect them. At that moment Visus revealed a fake smile. She praised Ayaka's thoughtfulness. Visus then offered to shake hands in reconciliation. However, when Ayaka touched the goddess's hand, she felt a terrifying cold presence from her. This made Ayaka extremely cautious. Back at the ruins, Tuka had finally escaped after many days of survival. His status screen showed that his abnormal status skills had been greatly enhanced. He could now freely adjust the range of paralysis and poison. In the deep forest, Tuka witnessed a group of large slime monsters. They were bullying a small slime. Tuka felt sympathy because both were abandoned beings. He used paralysis and poison to drive away the larger monsters. He successfully saved the small slime. Tuka named it Piggy. After reading forbidden magic about strengthening slimes, Tuka asked Piggy if it wished to walk the dangerous path of revenge with him. Piggy turned blue to express its agreement. Tuka finally accepted it as his first companion. At this time the Night Princess Sarah's Ashrain was being pursued by a group of holy guards. Because Sarah's was the main heroine, the holy guards coincidentally encountered Tuka. The knights looked down on Tuka. They intended to rob and kill him. Tuka pretended to beg to lower their guard. He then immediately used paralysis to lock their movements. At that moment Tuka realized that human nature can sometimes be more vicious than monsters. With his cold killing intent, Tuka used poison to finish all 4 holy guards. After the battle he discovered Sarah's hiding nearby. However, because of his extreme caution, Tuka ambushed and paralyzed Sarah's from behind. After confirming that Sarah's was not an ally of the holy guards, Tuka released the paralysis on her mouth so they could talk. He admitted that he had killed those men. He then demanded information about this world. Sarah's removed her mask to show her sincerity. She explained that this was the southern forest of the kingdom of Urza. When Tuka asked about the ancient script in his book, Sarah's revealed that only forbidden witches of the Golden Demon Zone could read those characters. After obtaining this valuable information, Tuka decided to release Sarah's as promised. He wished her good luck and continued his journey with Piggy. Tuka also reminded the slime. He warned it not to slaughter innocent people, because he only trusted rules of his own making. After many days of searching, Tuka finally arrived at the city of Mu. Disguised as a mercenary, a female soldier looked surprised when she saw that Tuka carried no weapons. However, because the Marquis urgently needed manpower to conquer new ruins, Tuka was still allowed to enter the city. He quickly went to an inn to rent a long-term room. At first the innkeeper showed no interest, but when he saw the money Tuka paid, His attitude instantly became unnaturally warm. That evening, Tuka walked around the city to observe the situation. He stopped by a restaurant. Tuka realized it was an ideal place to gather information. A group of mercenaries were discussing the strongest military forces on the continent. Among them, the Black Dragon Knight Order stood out. They were rumored to possess power equal to an entire nation. After listening, Tuka brought leftover food back to Piggy. What concerned him the most was finding a forbidden witch in the Golden Demon Zone, because he needed to craft enhancement medicine for Piggy. According to rumors, Mew was rapidly developing due to a newly discovered ruin. Therefore, Tuka planned to gather skeleton bone powder as material. On the day of the expedition, the Marquis announced a reward of 300 gold coins for anyone who found the Dragon-Eye Chalice. All treasures would be purchased, and materials from monster corpses could be freely used. While lining up to register, Tuka noticed Ceres being harassed by a man. The man claimed he had met her before, but Ceres firmly denied it. He loudly implied that Ceres was a wanted elf knight princess. However, when he pulled down her cloak, he panicked upon seeing that her appearance was completely different. Ashamed, he fled the scene. Tuka realized that Ceres had used a disguise skill. Before entering the ruins, Tuka happened to meet her again. He advised her to be careful, because that man had taken an interest in her. Tuka also asked Ceres for advice on buying equipment. He agreed to pay a referral fee, since Ceres was short on money. She accepted the offer. With Ceres's guidance, Tuka bought good equipment at low prices. He paid Ceres 3 silver coins as compensation. This surprised her greatly, but Ceres thanked him and accepted the money. Because Ceres had not slept for many days, she suddenly collapsed. Tuka caught her in time. He learned that she was simply sleep deprived. Tuka then said goodbye to Ceres. Upon entering the ruins, Tuka saw 2 men being chased by a small minotaur. He used paralysis and then poison to silently kill the monster. The mercenaries who arrived later concluded that the minotaur was killed by a sword. Tuka continued to wipe out monsters, but he was disappointed by the very low experience gain. Tuka decided to go deeper. At that moment, he accidentally overheard the man who harassed Ceres. The man had hired 2 dangerous individuals to assassinate her. They noticed Tuka and planned to kill him to silence him. Tuka pretended to seek peace. He then immediately locked the movements of all 3. Tuka applied poison to them and walked away. He left all 3 to die in agony. After that, Tuka rested for a while to recover. He thanked Piggy for standing guard. As he continued onward, he encountered Swordcat retreating, because the monsters in the ruins were dying too unnaturally. They invited Tuka to leave with them, but Tuka refused to go along. Not long after, Tuka found the Dragon-Eyed Chalice in a deep chamber. He knew that the dragon was actually still alive. Tuka immediately used paralysis and poison and took the chalice. Ceres appeared at the right moment and witnessed everything. Tuka offered the chalice to her, but Ceres refused, because its value was too great. At that moment, Tuka admitted his true objective. It was the monster hidden beneath the secret basement. Ceres then offered to act as Tuka's escort in order to return the chalice. Tuka agreed, but on the condition that she would not ask about his identity or purpose. In the end, the two formed a temporary alliance. With Ceres's strength, Tuka barely needed to take action. Ceres explained that monsters with golden eyes are beings influenced by the Demon King. They grant a large amount of experience, but you cannot gain points from killing humans. When Tuka saw that golden color, he was reminded of Takuto and felt uneasy. In a resting chamber, Tuka used sleep magic so Ceres could rest. From Ceres's story, Tuka learned that she had once been a captain of the Holy Kingdom Nice Knights, and that she was still being pursued by another group, especially a white-haired man who longed to fight her. After resting sufficiently, Tuka and Ceres continued exploring deeper into the ruins. While scouting, they were suddenly attacked by a skeleton knight commander. Ceres pointed to the silver core on its body. She said that if they destroyed that point, the monster would be defeated. Ceres drew her sword. She announced that she would use her equipment creation ability to enhance her power. Ceres also asked Tuka to keep this a secret. The skeleton prepared to unleash a powerful attack. This made Ceres tense, but Tuka remained calm. He immediately used paralysis to lock all of the monster's movements. Tuka then applied poison and finished it cleanly. While Tuka collected the skeleton's bone fragments, Ceres asked if this was what he was looking for. Tuka confirmed that it was. He said that once they returned to the surface, he would explain as much as he could. The two then prepared to leave. Suddenly Piggy reacted violently. The slime pointed toward a corner of the ruins. There lay an egg wrapped in magical cloth. Tuka noticed Piggy showed special interest in the egg, so Tuka decided to take it with him. Elsewhere, the group of students led by Yasu fell into chaos. They encountered two spiked skeletons. In this dangerous situation, only Kabato stayed behind to protect Sakura. Sakura had already lost one arm. Ayaka prepared to step in, but she was stopped by Oyamada. Amada then used Chain Fist Bullet to eliminate the enemy. Takuto activated Dragonic Booster and blew away the remaining skeleton. However, his attack almost struck Kabato's group. Fortunately, Ayaka pushed them aside in time. Takuto only coldly checked his status screen. He was satisfied with reaching level 24. Back in Mew, Ceres submitted the Dragon-Eyed Chalice to claim the reward. Meanwhile, Tuka quietly left. A short while later, Ceres chased after him and said that they would not receive the money until the next day. So, she planned to stay one more night. Tuka simply replied that, if she wished to talk privately, Ceres should come to his room at 8 in the evening. But, just as Tuka turned away, Ceres grabbed his hand and thanked him for the Dragon-Eyed Chalice. Tuka replied that she did not need to be so formal. That night at the inn, Tuka completed the monster enhancement solution. He told Piggy that he would test it right after the meal. When Ceres arrived, Tuka proposed hiring her as a long-term escort. He spread out a map and stated his goal. He intended to travel to the Golden Demon Zone to find a forbidden witch. Because that place was filled with monsters that fought in groups, he needed a warrior of real strength. Ceres replied that she was currently heading toward the Duchy of Jonas, and she would pass through the Demon Zone along the way. Tuka told her to think carefully before answering. He also apologized to Ceres, because he had used a skill on her while she slept in the ruins. Tuka warned that if she continued hiding her identity, Ceres would keep suffering sleep-related problems. But he promised he would never exploit or betray her. Ceres then revealed that she used spirit power to conceal her identity. In exchange, she had to sacrifice her desire to sleep. If Ceres ever fell into deep sleep, she would return to her true form. Previously, she had made a mistake. The Holy Guards had seen her true appearance. That was why Ceres was being hunted. Ceres expressed her gratitude to Tuka, because he had helped her resolve that trouble. Tuka asked if she trusted him. Ceres replied that she did. The two then exchanged their real names, but agreed to continue using aliases throughout their journey. In the end, they officially decided to travel together. Tuka took out the Azure Dragon Stone obtained from the couple who died in the ruins. He handed it to Ceres as her payment. Ceres was shocked. She said the stone was extremely rare. Its value far exceeded even the Dragon-Eyed Chalice. Although Ceres hesitated, she accepted it when Tuka insisted it was hers. Before ending the conversation, Ceres said that because she was being pursued, she could not reveal everything about herself. Tuka replied that he only cared about building an effective partnership. He had no intention of digging into Ceres's past. That night, Ceres kept thinking about Tuka. His image repeatedly appeared in her mind. But she told herself that she wanted to trust Tuka, just as she once trusted the princess long ago. The next morning during breakfast, they heard townsfolk speaking harshly about a mercenary and an elf. Tuka told Ceres to ignore it. When Tuka asked about forbidden magic, Ceres explained that Visus was the one who named the ancient spells forbidden by the goddess. Tuka silently thought that this forbidden technique was a direct threat to Visus. At this time, the two agreed to meet again at the early afternoon banquet. Tuka took the opportunity to enter the forest to test an enhancement potion on Piggy. At the banquet, the Marquis summoned an illusion-breaking mage to inspect the Dragon-Eyed Chalice. As the afternoon passed, Tuka waited for a long time. But Ceres did not appear. He assumed that she had already left. Meanwhile, at Alien Castle, Ayaka confronted the goddess Visus about Sakura. Visus stated that she had already used a healing spell. This was because Sakura was only rank B. However, when Ayaka refused to cooperate with Takuto, Visus accused her of being selfish. She then pretended to blame herself. In the end, Visus assigned Ayaka to train the students who failed the trial. Although Ayaka was dissatisfied, she still accepted the task and left. After waiting for too long, Tuka decided to leave Mew alone. On the way, he heard that Ceres was being pursued by the Black Dragon Knight Order. She had fled into the Forest of Darkness. Deep within the forest, Ceres was fighting under severe disadvantage. Her illusion had already been dispelled. As a result, Ceres could no longer use spirit enhancement. Even so, while at a disadvantage, she still managed to defeat several enemies. At that moment, a member of the 5 Dragon Knights appeared. His name was Jun. He immediately gave the order to kill her. When Ceres was pushed to the brink, Tuka suddenly appeared. He instantly cast paralysis on Jun. After that, Tuka used poison and sleep. He successfully rescued Ceres. At this moment, she said that Ceres did not want Tuka to be pursued by the Black Dragon Knight Order. She intended to return the Dragon Stone to Tuka. However, Tuka threw her an entire bag of Azure Dragon Gems. He then said that Tuka had great difficulty finding a bodyguard. Therefore, he asked Ceres to accompany him. This deeply moved Ceres. But then Tuka suddenly said, "Take off your clothes." Tuka then explained that Ceres's current outfit had already been seen by people in Mew City. Therefore, she needed to change clothes to avoid being identified. Ceres misunderstood Tuka's intentions. However, after hearing his explanation, she became embarrassed and apologized to Tuka. At this moment, Ceres proposed that if they could find the Forbidden Witch, the two of them should negotiate to have their identities concealed. However, the biggest problem was that no one knew the witch's exact location. Tuka also needed the Golden Demon Belt to decipher the ancient script. Therefore, the two decided to continue their partnership. At this point, Ceres admitted that she did not understand why Tuka would go so far for her. Tuka replied that Ceres reminded him of someone else. Although their appearance and personality were different, their demeanor was extremely similar. If he were to abandon Ceres, Tuka would feel as if he were abandoning that person. The two then returned to interrogate Jun. Even though they had promised to spare his life, he continued to provoke them. Ceres stepped forward and asked who was behind the plot to kill her. But, before Jun could answer, a sword suddenly fell from the sky. It killed him on the spot. At that moment, a dragon riding knight appeared. His entire body was clad in white armor. Only his eyes were pale red. He introduced himself as Civet. He was one of the 5 Dragon Knights. Civet was known as the Ultimate Human. At this moment, Civet revealed that the one who wanted Ceres dead was the former king of the Holy Kingdom. The king was obsessed with her body. He did not want Ceres to fall into another man's hands. Therefore, he hired assassins to kill her. At this point, Civet granted Ceres the right to fight for her own life. If she won the duel, Ceres would be granted freedom. However, Civet's attention gradually shifted to Tuka. He realized that Tuka showed no fear toward the 5 Dragon Knights. Tuka asked Civet whether he was searching for a strong enough opponent to satisfy himself. Tuka then suggested that instead of fighting other heroes, Civet should wait until Tuka became stronger. Tuka revealed his true name and stated that he was an otherworldly hero. However, due to his special position, he had separated from the group. Civet realized that Tuka was not lying. He was simply not telling the whole truth. Tuka then proposed a deal. Civet should let them go. In the future, when Tuka became stronger, one day, he would return and kill Civet with his own power. In the end, Civet agreed to let Tuka go. However, he declared that Ceres still had to die. Tuka immediately refused. He then stated that Tuka needed Ceres in order to reach the demon ring. This made Civet burst into laughter. He then agreed to release both of them. Finally, Civet ordered the surrounding units not to touch them. However, the moment Civet turned his back, Tuka suddenly showed a cold smile. He immediately activated paralysis. This caused the entire 5 Dragon Knight order to collapse to the ground. At that moment, Tuka declared that this was not a fairy tale but a path of revenge. The 5 Dragon Knight order was a threat that had to be completely eradicated. Tuka then used poison and sleep together with Piggy to restrain all remaining enemies. Although Civet could still move slightly under paralysis, he eventually collapsed due to his wounds. Before his death, Civet asked Tuka who he truly was. Tuka gave no answer. Suddenly, one dying knight fired a flare to call for reinforcements. Tuka told Ceres to retreat first. However, she refused. Ceres declared that she was Toka's bodyguard. She asked to receive the Azure Dragon Stone as agreed. The battle ended with the complete annihilation of the 5 dragon knights. Tuka swore to crush every obstacle on his path of revenge. Ceres asked to use her own strength to support Tuka. Even though she knew this was a deeply personal revenge, Tuka smiled and said that all debts would be repaid someday. On the hero's side, Ayaka had still not awakened her innate skill. At this moment, a purple-haired girl named Nidin appeared. She introduced herself as a subordinate of the goddess. Nidin would lead the group during Visis's absence. She easily suppressed Oyamada when he acted provocatively. She then announced that the heroes would return to the royal capital to prepare for the next phase. At this time, the goddess Visis was satisfied with the current results. This was because the day the heroes would face the Demon King was drawing closer. During a religious festival, Tuka happened to purchase a mask called King. The vendor claimed it was a relic of the Fly Demon King. That Demon King had once turned the Demon Island into a fortress to resist all invading forces. However, the Demon King was eventually expelled by the root of evil. In the end, his entire army was destroyed. Yet his downfall was remembered as a tragic and heroic ending. Meanwhile, Ceres was staying at an inn and waiting for Tuka to return. She silently vowed to continue fighting by his side. In the kingdom, news spread that the 5 dragon knights had fallen. Only a blood-soaked piece of cloth was found at the scene. It was believed to belong to Ceres. Based on the fabricated scene Tuka had created, everyone believed that Ceres was reported to be critically injured. She may have even died. At the same time, the Holy King Antora passed away in a mentally unstable state. The goddess concluded that the loss of the Black Dragon Knight Order, the strongest force against the Great Demon Emperor, had caused severe damage to the Holy Alliance. Therefore, the role of the otherworldly heroes became more important than ever. Some believed that when the root of evil appeared, other nations would be forced to rely on Alien to survive. Amid the doubts surrounding the deaths of the 5 dragon knights, a soldier delivered urgent news. A group calling itself the Orshin Sorcerer Council had emerged. They publicly claimed responsibility for destroying the Black Dragon Knight Order. Elsewhere, Tuka and Ceres arrived at the Blood Coliseum. This was a place where slaves and mercenaries fought for rewards and freedom. The arena was controlled by Duke Ung and operated by the Mercenary Guild. It was originally meant to assess warrior strength, but had now become a brutal form of entertainment. The two shared a single room to reduce expenses. That night, they heard rumors that Ceres was dead. The Orshin Council was openly taking credit for killing the 5 dragon knights. However, many people were skeptical. If anyone was capable of such a feat, it would have been the Dragon Slayer of the Blood Coliseum, or the Forbidden Witch Elf. She had disappeared more than 10 years ago. At this moment, Tuka approached Eve. She was the strongest blood gladiator. Eve had once reached the Golden Demon Ring. Eve admitted that she had been to the land believed to be the Forbidden Witch's domain. However, she had never met the witch herself. Eve also warned them that ordinary people could not survive there for more than 3 days. Ceres realized that Eve was hiding the truth. She firmly stated that Eve knew the witch's exact location. After that, Tuka and Ceres continued their preparations. Their goal was to gather information and confront the forces manipulating the Blood Coliseum. This was a place where the final match usually meant death for the strongest warriors. The arena organizers were certain to try killing Eve's speed in order to force a generational change among the blood gladiators. Ceres believed that they should wait for tomorrow's match to stop the plot. However, Tuka did not want to wait. Tuka took the initiative to meet Eve. He bluntly stated that her denial of knowing the witch's location was a lie. Ceres confirmed his claim. Tuka revealed that the organizers and the Duke were plotting to ensure Eve's defeat in tomorrow's match. After that, they planned to kill her to silence her. This was because Eve possessed critical information about the witch. Tuka wanted to save her. Tuka then suggested that Eve escape that very night, together with the girl whose freedom Eve was trying to buy. Ceres understood that for the past 2 years, Eve had been fighting solely to save that girl. However, Eve refused. She believed that if they ran away, the Duke, the mercenaries, and the arena operators would hunt them relentlessly. Without legal freedom, the two of them would never be able to live in peace. Tuka then offered another option. The Golden Demon Ring, the dwelling place of the Forbidden Witch. With the witch's protection, the two of them could escape completely. Tuka promised that he would protect the girl. Eve doubted Tuka's strength. She believed that even with magic, Tuka could not be compared to the danger of the Golden Demon Ring. At that moment, Tuka revealed the truth. He was the one who killed the 5 dragon knights. To prove it, Tuka used the paralyze skill. Eve was rendered completely unable to move. Tuka then issued a warning that, if she tried to resist, Eve's body would begin to hemorrhage. Tuka said that with this unreasonable power, a weak person like him had managed to kill Sivad. He was the one known as the ultimate human. Ceres also revealed that the person previously hunted by the 5 dragon knights was herself. Even though Eve believed in Tuka's strength, she still decided to participate in tomorrow's match. She could not place her trust in people she had only known for a few days. Tuka warned her that even if Eve won today, the Duke would not keep his word. However, Eve replied that in the world of the Blood Coliseum, she knew exactly whom she could trust. Before leaving, Tuka wished Eve victory. He also said that if she changed her mind, Eve should come to the bridge in front of the main gate the next morning. Ceres apologized for revealing her identity. However, that only made Tuka's words more convincing. On the way, they encountered the Orshin Sorcerer Council. This group claimed to be the ones who killed the 5 dragon knights. They were spreading fear everywhere. When they attempted to abduct innocent women, Tuka used a skill that made them slaughter each other. At the same time, Eve secretly overheard the Duke's conversation. According to their plan, Eve would be given a paralysis drug before the match. After that, she would be killed and turned into a trophy. The Duke also intended to take the girl Eve was protecting. He planned to raise her and turn her into a tool or merchandise. When Eve learned the truth, she was filled with rage. However, she was forced to restrain herself. In the end, Eve decided to go to the meeting point with Tuka. She brought the girl with her and agreed to lead them to the Golden Demon Ring. However, on the condition that Tuka must protect the child. Before leaving, Eve rescued the girl from the inn. The girl had been abused both physically and mentally there. Tuka punished the innkeeper with multiple negative status effects. He then staged the scene to look like a robbery. At this moment, the girl introduced herself as Liz. Tuka also revealed his true name. Liz begged to go with Sister Eve. Even though they knew the road ahead was extremely dangerous, Tuka still agreed. Eve asked Tuka about his true objective. He said Thotha was searching for a way to decipher an ancient spellbook. The Forbidden Witch was the only one who could do that. Eve realized that Tuka could have used harsher methods to force them. However, he chose not to. Therefore, she decided to trust Tuka. When they were being pursued, Tuka ordered the group to split up. Each person would use a horse as a decoy. He judged that one group belonged to the Duke's forces. The other group belonged to the Orshin Council. Tuka ordered Eve to take Liz and escape into the forest. Meanwhile, he and Ceres would lure the enemies into favorable terrain. At this moment, Muaji quickly realized it was a trap. He noticed deliberately broken branches. He loudly demanded that Tuka and Ceres come out and surrender. When Ceres stepped forward wearing a mask, Muaji realized that she was the Fly Swordsman. Ceres was a subordinate of the legendary Fly King. He offered to spare them if Ceres handed over Tuka and Eve. Muaji also invited her to join the Orshin Sorcerer Council. If she refused, he threatened to use a curse that even the 5 dragon knights could not withstand. At that moment, Ceres pretended to agree to guide them. However, she demanded guarantees for Tuka's and Eve's safety. Muaji immediately sensed something was wrong. He ordered his soldiers to keep their distance and prepare for battle. This was because he suspected that Ceres was luring them into a kill zone. At that moment, Ceres asked Muaji why he did not use the so-called curse directly. Muaji then revealed his true nature. The curse was nothing more than poison coated on arrows. It was also a form of assassination that left no evidence. The deaths of the 5 dragon knights had likewise been fabricated as a curse to display power. Orshin's true objective was to exploit the Duke's family to infiltrate politics. They planned to assassinate obstacles and gradually seize control of the nation. At this point, Muaji claimed that the one who truly killed the 5 dragon knights was another man. At that very moment, Tuka emerged from the forest. He released a flash of light that blinded the entire enemy formation. Tuka used Paralyze to immobilize all the soldiers. He then poisoned Muaji. Tuka explained that Muaji had fallen into a trap. This was because Muaji trusted his own deductions too much. Muaji coughed up blood and died on the spot. In the end, Tuka's plan unfolded perfectly. The first reinforcement unit was also eliminated one by one with Paralyze and poison. When the Duke appeared, he went mad and threatened Liz. Tuka immediately paralyzed him and handed him over to Ceres. Tuka stated that plotting against Ceres might have been forgivable, but targeting a child was not. After confirming that no one was left alive, Tuka used freezing to destroy all the corpses and erase every trace. He allowed Orshin to continue being seen as the killers of the 5 Dragon Knights. There was now no one left to prove their existence. News reached the royal palace. The Orshin Sorcerer Council had vanished. Only the corpses of the Duke and his subordinates remained. The plan to use them as political pawns had completely failed. The king feared reporting this to the goddess. The scale of the incident had far exceeded expectations. On the journey ahead, Liz gradually opened her heart to Ceres. Ceres comforted her by saying that the oppression and abuse she suffered before were wrong. From now on, she should trust the people she chose. Liz wished to follow Ceres's words. Ceres promised to stay by her side like an older sister. At night, Ceres volunteered to stand guard. Tuka used sleep to let her rest. During their conversation, Tuka revealed that revenge was the only reason he kept fighting. He would eliminate anything that threatened himself or his allies. Ceres decided to continue traveling with him. Her own goal was related to the goddess. The group decided to name their mercenary team, the Fly King's Warrior Corps. After that, they entered the Golden Demon Ring. Before them stood the tainted ancient tree. It had once been a sacred spirit tree. At this moment, Eve passed down the tribal crest to Tuka. It allowed the location of the Forbidden Witch to be identified through 2 colored points. Elsewhere, the goddess announced that the heroes' levels were rising abnormally fast. She detected major movements from the Demon King's faction. Visus warned that the coming battle will be on an unprecedented scale. The heroes must continue training. Their next destination is the Golden Demon Ring. At this time, Ceres noticed that Liz was carrying heavy luggage. She offered to help. However, the girl refused. Liz said that carrying her own belongings was the best way to increase her chances of survival. Tuka patted her head and said that Liz was also a member of the mercenary team. If she felt tired, she should speak up. After traveling a bit further, Piggy suddenly sent out a warning signal. A mutated moss lizard burst out and attacked. Tuka quickly subdued it with Paralyze. He then used poison and added sleep as a precaution. The monster died quickly. Tuka remarked that the creature only looked dangerous. In reality, it was far weaker than the monsters they had faced in previous ruins. Tuka handed Ceres a book. He said that the moss covering the monster's body could be material for forbidden magic. He allowed Ceres to keep it if she was interested. At this moment, Tuka's actions appeared very manly. However, he still spoke cautiously to avoid revealing too much. Later, as they crossed a dangerous river section, Eve offered to carry Liz across. But Tuka objected. He believed that Liz needed to learn how to be independent. The girl slipped and almost fell. Piggy immediately wrapped around her to break the fall. Eve realized that Tuka had anticipated this situation. During their conversation, a misunderstanding caused Ceres to become so embarrassed that she slipped into the water. Tuka handed her his clothes and said they were washed regularly. Ceres blushed deeply. She joked that he might have smelly armpits. She then immediately apologized. Soon after, Ceres sensed the killing intent of a powerful monster. Eve said that this very species had once forced her and Liz to flee from the Golden Demon Ring. Tuka ordered Eve and Liz to fall back. He stayed behind and waited for the monster to enter range. When it appeared, Tuka used Paralyze and poison to kill it in an instant. At that moment, his level rose to 1798. His stats also surged to extreme values. Tuka drew his knife to process the corpse. Ceres realized that the slime on her hands was material to strengthen Piggy. As the group prepared to leave, Piggy repeatedly pointed at Tuka's bag. Tuka remembered the monster egg he had been carrying. The egg hatched into a horse-like creature. It showed no hostility and instead appeared extremely affectionate. Ceres explained that the creature possessed an organ that absorbed magical energy. Tuka infused it with mana. This caused it to evolve into a large black steed. The horse was well suited for carrying luggage. However, it was still not satisfied. Tuka then injected an additional 10,000 mana points. This caused it to evolve into an 8-legged divine beast. Tuka named it Slay. Elsewhere, the group of otherworldly heroes was also hunting monsters to level up. Takuto flaunted his power with high-tier skills. He proclaimed himself the future king. Meanwhile, the Takao sisters dealt with spies. They suspected those agents were sent by the goddess. Back with Toka's group, they set up camp inside ancient ruins. Slay shrank in size and was fed by Liz. At this moment, Tuka gazed toward the northeast, in the direction of the goddess's dwelling. The next morning, Ceres and Eve woke up but could not find Tuka. As expected, he was nearby with Piggy. Tuka was processing materials from a Jimensowl he had killed during the night. Ceres admitted that thanks to Tuka, the group could finally see hope within this darkness. However, she wished he would not carry everything alone. Before them stood a massive mountain. The only path forward was the eastern cliff face. Ceres advised Tuka to rest. However, he wanted to go as far as possible before the rain fell. Eve said that she was not afraid. As long as Tuka was alive, she believed they would be safe. Tuka clearly felt the weight of that trust. He silently vowed not to let it become an illusion. Fortunately, the group found a shortcut leading to the witch's dwelling. Before parting ways, Eve thanked Tuka and Ceres. She said that because of them, her dream of living freely could finally become reality. Suddenly, a multi-headed monster appeared without any warning. Eve severed its head with a single strike. Tuka confirmed that the monster was dead. However, Tuka felt that something was still wrong. Even though the monster's head had been severed and sent flying, it continued to emit a horrifying sound. Immediately after, the ground began to shake violently. Tuka placed his hand on the ground and suddenly realized that an enormous number of monsters were charging in from every direction. Tuka quickly understood that the dying scream of the monster had attracted a massive horde of Jimensowl. Faced with this critical situation, Eve volunteered to act as bait and lure the monsters away. She wanted to buy time for Ceres and Liz to reach the Forbidden Witch. At that moment, Eve knelt down and spoke to Liz. She said that she had to do this. Eve's sensing ability and mobility were best suited to the terrain. She asked Liz to listen to Tuka and Ceres until the day they met again. Tuka agreed to the plan. However, he bluntly stated that Eve's chances of survival were very low. The monster she had just killed specialized in ambush attacks. Allowing it to scream had been a tactical mistake. Tuka accepted part of the responsibility. He admitted that he had failed to suppress it in time. Tuka emphasized that Eve was extremely important for the meeting with the witch. This was because the map had once been entrusted to her family. Eve's presence would make negotiations much easier. At this moment, Tuka attached an amplification stone to the Fly King mask. He concluded that the optimal plan for everyone to survive was for Tuka, Piggy, and Slay to confront the enemy directly. Only Toka's skills could deal fatal damage to Jimensowl. Tuka ordered Ceres and Eve not to interfere. Eve and Liz bowed their heads in gratitude. However, Tuka said it was still too early to say farewell. After that, Ceres prayed for Toka's safety. Tuka entrusted everything else to Ceres and appointed her as his vice commander. Meanwhile, the group of otherworldly students fell into chaos. Ayaka tried to take command. Takuto and Oyamada focused only on displaying their power. Several students died after being abandoned. An argument broke out when Gasu declared that the weak dying was only natural. Ayaka refuted him by saying that the strong had a responsibility to protect their comrades. Takuto interrupted. He looked down on Ayaka and proclaimed himself the future king. Back on the battlefield, Tuka ordered Ceres and Eve to hide inside a rock cave. He infused mana into Slay to activate its ultimate combat form. At the same time, Tuka had Piggy slip into the mask to emit taunting signals. Tuka then mounted Slay and charged forward. He deliberately drew the attention of all the monsters. Tuka fully understood that there was no guarantee he would survive. He activated the status screen and declared an all-out assault. Tuka used Paralyze, Poison, and Chaos-inducing skills to make the monsters slaughter one another. His goal was to reduce their numbers. However, the Jimensowl leader remained wary of Piggy's tentacles and had not yet suffered fatal damage. At this moment, the weather worsened. Heavy rain reduced both visibility and sound. Tuka was forced to fuse with Piggy. However, his mana rapidly declined. The state could not be maintained for long. The only remaining strategy was to kill as many monsters as possible to level up. This plan was extremely risky. Still, Tuka could only place his bet on Piggy and slay. Just as Ceres and Eve returned near the battlefield, Tuka defeated more monsters and leveled up to 1921. His mana was restored. Tuka unleashed a barrage of spells to wipe out most of the horde. He used sleep to eliminate those pursuing from behind. After that, he turned to face the enemy head-on. Tuka charged straight into the center of the monster swarm. He continued to cut them down without pause. In another area, a girl named Kabato sat crying. She was terrified and blamed herself for being weak. Eve appeared with the intention of helping her. However, mistaking Eve for an enemy, Itsuki used lightning to restrain her. At this moment, Eve also realized that they were otherworldly heroes. They were the ones summoned by the goddess to eradicate the root of evil. Just as Tuka had said, Eve tried to evade the attacks while her body was repeatedly shocked by lightning. Itsuki became more aggressive with every strike. Just as she was about to deliver the finishing blow, Hijiri suddenly stopped her. Hijiri said that the opponent was not a monster. It possessed intelligence and the ability to communicate. Eve's throat had been injured by an earlier attack. As a result, she could not speak. Hijiri politely apologized for her sister's recklessness. Itsuki also bowed and admitted her mistake. The atmosphere gradually calmed down. When Eve sheathed her sword, Hijiri introduced herself and her group as people from another world. She admitted that they were searching for companions. Hijiri speculated that Eve's master must be strong enough to survive Jimensowl. Eve replied that her master could not be compared in ordinary terms. She then hurried away to return to the battlefield. Meanwhile, Tuka continued fighting like a madman. After eliminating the last monster in the area, he checked his remaining mana. Tuka recalled Piggy to let it rest and thanked Slay. He removed his mask. Aside from a minor injury from an earlier fall, Tuka was largely unharmed. Even though Tuka had reached level 2000, his stamina and injuries did not recover automatically. Tuka sensed that one Jimensowl was still hiding and observing. He mounted Slay and went searching for it. As Tuka expected, the final monster suddenly launched continuous beams of blue light. Tuka was wounded in the shoulder. Slay was severely injured in the leg and collapsed. Tuka was forced to switch to fighting alongside Piggy. He relied solely on long-range attacks. Tuka used everything he could to confuse the enemy. The Fly King mask, slime clones. He even used Slay as bait. When the boss monster grew confused and searched around, Tuka struck from above with Paralyze and Poison to finish it. He explained Thotha had used all three as decoys. Tuka himself had leapt high to find the perfect angle. He used monster corpses as both shields and visual obstructions. Tuka realized that he had nearly died when a beam grazed his shoulder. When Tuka reached level 2019, the Paralyze skill was suddenly upgraded. He also unlocked a new high-tier skill. Just as he prepared to return, another monster launched an ambush. It charged in wildly. Eve split it in half in an instant. Tuka recognized Eve. Feeling relieved, he collapsed into her arms and lost consciousness. Eve carried Tuka back to the cave and explained her encounter with the otherworldly heroes. Tuka realized that they were the Takao sisters and Kabato. This pleased him. Eve had not revealed his identity. Tuka believed it was best for the heroes to think he was dead. Otherwise, they might become obstacles to his revenge against the goddess. After hours of waiting, Liz ran out and hugged Tuka in joy. Ceres finally let out a sigh of relief when he returned safely. As night fell, Ceres treated Tuka's wounds and tended to the magical beasts. Eve stood guard outside. By the campfire, Tuka praised Ceres for her swordsmanship and first aid skills. She boasted that she could also sew and offered to mend Tuka's clothes. Later, Tuka could not fall asleep. He was thinking too much. Ceres let him rest his head on her lap. She asked him not to shoulder everything alone. Ceres admitted that she was afraid of losing Tuka. If he continued like this, Tuka replied that if you are worried about him, then support him with everything you have so that it never happens. At that moment, Ceres tightly held his hand. She said that whenever Tuka was in trouble, he should rely on her. Tuka said that he was 17 years old. This surprised Ceres. She had thought he was older. Even though Ceres was a high elf, she herself was only 19. Ceres said that she regarded Tuka as her one and only king. She had no intention of changing that loyalty. Tuka felt at ease and drifted into sleep. Ceres, however, was too embarrassed by her impulsive actions to fall asleep. She had to rely on Toka's sleep magic to finally rest. Elsewhere, Itsuki wondered why Kabato chose to stay with the Asagi group. Kabato explained that she owed Asagi a debt of gratitude. She did not want the class to descend into mutual slaughter. Therefore, she chose to stay. She believed that one day, she could save Ayaka. The next morning, Ceres said that one day she would confess her feelings. However, she still lacked the courage at present. Ceres feared that unrequited feelings might damage Toka's trust. Even so, she decided to become someone Tuka could rely on. When they entered the witch's territory, ancient magic seals suddenly activated and created golems. Tuka only used paralyze to restrain them instead of destroying them. To their surprise, inside stood a gigantic ancient tree. Numerous golems were mining resources around it. At that moment, a door required mana infusion to open. After passing through the gate, Toka's group was transported to another space. The Forbidden Witch descended from above. She was the only one capable of deciphering the forbidden spells. Those spells held the key to taking revenge on the goddess Visus. At the same time, Visus ordered urgent messages to be sent to the 4 holy palaces. She summoned the heroes to confront the Demon King's army. After all the turmoil, Tuka finally stood before the Forbidden Witch. He silently thought, "Just wait, Visus. I will crush everything." And that concludes today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support Oni-chan in making even more exciting videos. Thank you all for watching until the very end. Much love.